Again, what Democratic senators appear to be pursuing here is not a broadcast strategy to persuade the public, right? To persuade the media. The strategy around releasing the Roe memo, and I say it's a Democratic strategy because NBC News said explicitly today that when they got it from, quote, Democratic sources. This strategy is aimed at two specific Republican senators. It has an audience, a very specific audience. And those two senators have admitted that they will base their vote in part on that issue. I mean, whether or not anybody else is moved or persuaded about the certainty of Kavanaugh as a vote to make abortion illegal, right? Whether or not this memo persuades anybody about that. The key question is whether Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins are persuaded by the release of this memo. Hawaii Senator Mazie Hirono also thwarted the confidentiality that Republicans tried to assert on Kavanaugh's documents by releasing this one from Kavanaugh's time in the George W. Bush White House in 2002. This is Brett Kavanaugh writing June 4th, 2002 to another White House official, quote, "I think the testimony needs to make clear that any program targeting Native Hawaiians as a group is subject to strict scrutiny and of questionable validity under the Constitution." Now, that is a very specific issue. Why would Mazie Hirono be going out on a limb as a senator to break the supposed confidentiality of these documents in order to release this specific document from Brett Kavanaugh's past? It's not on a lot of different issues. It's specific to this one thing. It's that one statement, basically, is the document. Now, is this kind of an issue going to turn the national tide against Brett Kavanaugh? No. That specific document might not even garner a single national headline when it comes to Brett Kavanaugh. But you don't need to turn the tide. You don't need to turn the whole country. You need 2 votes. You need to turn 2 Republican senators. And so who is Mazie Hirono targeting here? She's not being subtle about it. She's very much spelling it out. When she announced that she was releasing this document, quote, "I referred to a committee confidential document where Judge Kavanaugh questioned the validity of programs that benefit Native Hawaiian programs and, by extension, Alaska Natives." And in case it's still not clear enough that this Democratic effort is specifically targeted, specifically designed, narrowcast, to make it impossible for Alaska Senator Lisa Murkowski to vote for this nominee, Mazie Hirono really is willing to put that fine a point on it.
I think you have a problem here. Your view is that Native Hawaiians don't deserve protections as Indigenous people under the Constitution. And your argument raises a serious question about how you would rule on the constitutionality of programs benefiting Alaska Natives. I think that my colleagues from Alaska should be deeply troubled by your views.
My colleagues from Alaska. So we've got Democrats giving Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski a reason to vote no on Kavanaugh by showing that Kavanaugh actually doesn't think Roe versus Wade is settled law. They've both said that specific aspect of his record is key to their vote. In addition, we've got Lisa Murkowski getting another reason to vote no. Mazie Hirono taking it upon herself to expose to the public this document that shows that Lisa Murkowski might have a real problem back home with the considerable Alaska Native vote in her home state if she votes for this nominee who's absolutely on the record hostile to programs that benefit them or recognize them. And you might have seen this morning Mazie Hirono's announcement that she had released these documents. It came right after Senator Cory Booker stopped the show today when he announced that he was willing to risk expulsion from the Senate, if necessary, to release documents that, again, had inexplicably been marked confidential and hidden from the public. The ones he wanted to release included Kavanaugh's communications about racial profiling and affirmative action. Thanks to that action by Democrats in the Senate, we now have this document. Here's Brett Kavanaugh in 2001 calling affirmative action, quote, "a naked racial set-aside." And he was not just opining in general. This is him talking about a Department of Transportation program that's supposed to benefit minority-owned contractors for getting government contracts. He calls it a, quote, "naked racial set-aside." He's also on the record calling a government program for Native Hawaiians a, quote, "naked racial spoils system." It's almost like when Judge Ryan Bounds wrote about the ethnic elites. Except, oh wait, Ryan Bounds never became a judge, because Republican Senator Tim Scott and maybe even Republican Senator Marco Rubio decided they could not stomach that kind of past writing on race for a judicial nominee. And they decided that just a few weeks ago, and that nomination failed. And at least one reporter heard the Democrats cheering. They don't need them all. They don't need the media. They don't need, they don't need to entertain any of us. They just need 2 votes. And those no votes can be for any reason at all that's important to those 2 Republican senators. So the Democrats did blow up the process again a little bit today by calling Republicans bluff on what Kavanaugh documents could be shown to the public. But it's not a blind eruption of some kind designed to get attention. When you look at the stuff they're releasing and the way they're releasing it and presenting it in these hearings, it's clear this is a very tightly targeted effort to speak meaningfully to specific Republican senators who really might have concerns with specific substantive elements of Brett Kavanaugh's record that would otherwise not have been let out of committee and would not have made it into the newspaper. I mean, for the most part, it appears that the Republican senators who are really being targeted here in this effort are not senators who are members of the Judiciary Committee. So when Democrats release these documents that have been marked committee confidential, those are documents that otherwise wouldn't have been seen by anybody off the committee. When they're releasing these documents, that may be the only way they can let Senator Tim Scott know that Brett Kavanaugh says affirmative action is a naked racial set-aside. That may be the only way they can let Senator Lisa Murkowski know what Brett Kavanaugh would do to Native Alaskans. That may be the only way they can lay it out as clearly as possible for Senator Lisa Murkowski and Senator Susan Collins that Brett Kavanaugh really doesn't think that Roe is settled law. He really does think the court could overturn that. It's not just noise here. There is a melody. There is a method to what they are doing. And alongside that, there are 2 other things going on here that we're going to talk about over the course of this evening. Number